What you absolutely need to know when buying real estate in Cyprus, part 2. Now we're going to talk about building volume.
Construction quality and building volume.
Construction quality and building volume. And of course, this is a very, very important area where you should definitely seek some expertise. And if you want to know what you absolutely need to pay attention to if you want to be able to identify building volumes or ideally already recognize quantities during the construction phase in Cyprus, then make sure to watch this video all the way to the end. And don't forget, we also have a first part that covers marketing, pricing, and sales documents. That's also a very, very important area. So let's get started. Wonderful. So thank you very much for joining us. And now we're going to talk about construction defects and construction execution. Gerhard Hedke is back again. Gerhard, for everyone who doesn't know you yet, could you briefly introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Gerhard Hedke. I've been in Cyprus since 2022, and I'm the founder and director of CARES Ltd. And I basically look after, help, or support people who are interested in buying real estate, and I offer my support in that area.
Okay, but you're actually not a realtor. You support in this situation with construction execution, detailed planning, as well as thorough inspections being carried out throughout the entire process.
Those are kind of
an interesting field. At least as far as I know, there are also not a second time on the island, at least not that I know of. Maybe there is someone, but that's really the extent of my knowledge. And of course, it's especially interesting when someone expects or wants a Central or Northern European standard, but obviously can't find that as the default here. That's just how it is. After all, we are in Southern Europe, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. And of course, you're not the right contact person for that. Okay, interesting. Good to know. Then let's get started. I'm really curious.
This is a short presentation that I've prepared. So buying property in Cyprus, what you absolutely need to know. We saw part 1 already. Now comes part 2. Once again, I am the founder and director of CARES Ltd. With over 35 years of experience in the construction industry, and I offer support with construction projects and property purchases in Cyprus. Wonderful. So let's get started. So I would like to talk about some factors to consider when buying property in Cyprus, or what you should pay attention to. And this video is about construction quality and building defects. When I first arrived in Cyprus, I was very surprised. Although I immediately felt very comfortable, when I saw the construction projects along the roadside here, I was a bit shocked. There are significant differences, after all, in the quality of construction between German-speaking countries and Cyprus. In Germany, the standard of construction quality is defined by the VOB Part B, as well as the generally accepted rules of technology and building practice. For every expert, this is basically the Bible, and even the courts make their judgments based on this VOB and the recognized rules of building practice. So this is the document that is also updated regularly. To my knowledge, there is nothing like this in Cyprus. Here there is always the Cypriot standard, which is defined in some way. However, so far in my conversations with the architect, I have found that there is no precise definition, no written document, or at least not to that extent. And what is built and sold as standard in Cyprus would often be considered defective or not professionally executed in Germany. Okay, that's just the difference. And some things are just different ways of doing things, which might not look that nice, but others are quite serious and are also a major reason why construction defects occur. So now I have taken a look at what, from a clear understanding, are faulty executions, often not just in the masonry, but also in the waterproofing against moisture and rain, in creating an airtight building envelope, in screed work, in tiling. So in many areas, there are things that are done differently compared to German standards. These differences lie in the way things are executed. But since I can't address every single point in this presentation, I've picked out the most important ones: masonry and waterproofing against moisture and rain. So let's dive into that now. Here, I took a look at a construction project. It's from a renowned developer in Larnaca, and it's actually the best you can currently get here to buy in Cyprus. And it does look...
I was just about to say, at first glance, it doesn't look bad at all. Everything looks pretty tidy, nicely scaffolded. The walls also look straight, though of course I can't check with the spirit level right now. But at first glance, it certainly doesn't look like a disaster, does it?
Yes, it looks very good, even by Cypriot standards. Well, let's just say it can definitely look a lot more African.
Okay. Without plaster. Without turning the consonant too close. Yeah, but yes.
Okay, so, well, So here I've brought in Northern European construction methods for comparison with the Cypriot ones. At first glance, we don't see any major differences, but as they say, the devil is in the details. If you look at both, okay, the top is very, very tidy. Here, maybe not quite as nice, but okay.
Yes.
But let's just move on. A significant difference is that in Cyprus, the bricks are built with horizontal hollow chambers, while in Northern Europe, they use vertical hollow chambers. So here it's horizontal. The hollow chambers run from left to right. And in Germany, they go from top to bottom. You might say, who cares, or it doesn't matter. But actually, it does matter. The difference has a significant impact on energy efficiency.
Explain why, so that people can...
I've also marked it here with little arrows. Using the photos, I want to explain the negative consequences. So here's how it works. I have my holes from the horizontal construction method, and of course, I have my energy value. A block like this is so energy efficient because it has a wall, or rather a wall web, an air wall web, air, and wall web alternating all the way through. And that's why I have my energy factor. If, of course, I turn the block the wrong way or the other way around, so that using the photo, I want to point out the negative consequences of installing the block horizontally. Let me explain. The difference here is very clear. A brick or a block like this is so energy efficient because it is made up of hollow chambers and webs. Webs and hollow chambers in the block. They run from left to right in this area or from the outside to the inside. Because I always have wall, air, I get my insulation. However, if I install the blocks the way they are here so that the cold air can basically travel from the outside to the inside, the cold air will spread into the wall. Or here. Then of course I have no thermal insulation at all. And it's even worse if the blocks are installed like this, so that I really don't have any block at all, and the cold air can go directly from the inside to the outside.
It's incredible how clearly you can see that. The air just goes straight through, so there's not much insulation left then.
When I saw this for the first time, I thought I was going to faint. Because it's absolutely... And I've talked to many site managers and engineers who tell me, we've been doing it this way for 30 years, or we've been doing it this way for 50 years. We've always done it like this. That's true.
One thing you really have to say, and I say this as a layperson, of course, is that it's not the end of the world, but in terms of energy efficiency, it's a disaster. And you have to put that into perspective as well. As far as I know, in Cyprus, this is the only way things are built. So you'll find, I don't know any developer or construction company that sets the bricks vertically. They are always used horizontally for whatever reason. I see it on every construction site. The bricks are being laid upside down, at least from our perspective. Perhaps there is some reason, a supposed reason, who knows why it is done this way. But for energy efficiency, it is, of course,
craziness. Nobody could explain a reason to me. I sent the construction details to a German energy consultant. He is an architect and an energy consultant. He said yes. So the energy certificate or the energy efficiency class A on paper, which is certified, never. Yes.
Yes.
Well, it is what it is. This is not a defect in the sense that it is not durable or that I have to fear the wall will collapse, but it is simply a deficiency in energy efficiency. So what is specified is difficult. So it can't be proven like that because the energy certificate or a wall, the U value of the wall is based on a single type of brick in that direction.
Yes.
Not the way it's installed here.
And what you might also need to know, now maybe some viewers are thinking, well, Cyprus is a very, very warm island. And yes, we have an extremely pleasant warm climate here. And from April to December, it's really beautiful on the island. It's relatively comfortably warm, but we also have winter. And from January to March, of course, it does rain sometimes. Sub-zero temperatures are extremely rare, yes, but of course there are sometimes harsh winters, and there are also nights in January when it's 10 or even 5 degrees. That does happen. And for that, I definitely want to have a reasonably energy efficient house. That definitely makes a difference when it comes to electricity and heating costs.
Exactly.
It's no small matter, in my opinion. And even in summer, when you're cooling, it also plays a role. It's not just a winter issue.
Exactly. So if you want it warm in the apartment in winter, it will be cold in summer. Here, it's just the way it is. Because of how the bricks are built, in summer, I basically have a wall heater because air can penetrate the wall. And in winter, I have a wall cooler. So it's exactly the opposite of what I want.
Absolutely, yes.
And here again, for comparison, Northern Europe. Over the course of 35 years, throughout my entire professional experience, I have never ever seen a single house that was constructed using these Poroton bricks where the bricks themselves were actually installed in a horizontal orientation. Not once in all that time. Never.
A very interesting, important point. Good to know.
So here you can see it a bit more clearly, that here practically on every corner. On the one hand, the wall here is being flooded with warm or cold air. Here it is from the other side. It's very important, especially when I have window openings. For example, I have a wall with 3 windows and in between just a wall section. That section is then even exposed to airflow from both sides. Yes, so it's just very unfortunate. But as long as demand in Cyprus remains so high and construction continues this way, nothing will change for the developers.
That's just the norm. It's the standard. It's done this way. As you said, it's always been done this way. There's no awareness of the problem.
Another important point is that in Cyprus, windows are installed in the middle, so they're centered in the wall. And the window reveals should normally also be insulated with 8 centimeters. But here in Cyprus, they're insulated with only 2 centimeters. So that's another weak point, where at the reveals, I don't even have 8 centimeters there, I only have 2 centimeters. In Germany, windows are usually installed flush with the exterior, so that 8 centimeters of insulation can be built over the frame. And with that, I have an airtight envelope, but the windows are installed airtight using compression tape and glued in with a membrane. That's not the case here. Here you can see that this is another weak point. This isn't even for monetary reasons. If I install the windows flush with the exterior, I don't even need to plaster the window reveals. It's not a monetary reason, because installing the windows flush with the exterior is actually more cost effective. It's simply done this way because that's how it's always been done or is still being done. So here, as I said, the wall or the cold or warm air only has 2 centimeters of insulation to bridge, plus a bit of plaster.
Also interesting in this context, maybe you've already noticed it in the top right corner, is the gap, this hole, which might still be filled with construction foam or something, but of course that's anything but professional.
Yes, that's also common here. Let's say a wet saw or a carbide foxtail saw isn't used here. Instead, things are just hacked away or the stones are simply set as they are.
Leftover pieces go into the hole and then it's closed up. Exactly, that's right.
But as I said, this is, as mentioned, the defect is there is an issue in terms of energy efficiency, but it's not like the wall won't hold because of it or that any other problems will arise.
That's a good point, and maybe it should be explained, especially for those who might not be very familiar with the island yet. Construction here is generally earthquake-proof. You have this skeleton construction with concrete, and it's really very, very stable. No earthquake can do any harm to it. So maybe you don't need Okai to be afraid that the house will collapse. It's simply a lack of energy efficiency.
A lot of emphasis is also placed on making sure the reinforced concrete structure is really done properly. And I haven't seen anywhere that there are cracks in the reinforced concrete structure. I've never seen that anywhere. So in that sense, that's also something positive.
That's a very good standard. It delivers what it promises. An important topic. We don't have an earthquake every week, but maybe every 1 or 2 years and not extremely strong.
but it does shake a little.
It can shake sometimes, yes. That's certainly an important point. Not like in Turkey, where unfortunately during the last major earthquake, a huge number of buildings collapsed. That's just unbelievable, of course.
Yes, but now we're coming to something that's not so nice, and which also comes into play. Namely, it's about the building's waterproofing against moisture and rain. And anyone who thinks that on Cyprus, poor protection of the building structure against rain doesn't matter because it almost never rains here is seriously mistaken. In the months after I moved here, I've now been here for 2 years, I was really surprised the first time by how much it pours here in winter. I mean, the way it rains here, how heavy the rain is. Torrents come rushing down from the mountains, so you really can't compare this to Germany. Well, maybe if you consider sometimes yes, but and in the months of December, January, and February, there are heavy rains that bring significant amounts of water. For comparison, I actually looked this up. According to Wikipedia, the average annual precipitation in Germany is about 700 milliliters, and in Cyprus it's 500. That's really not that much less. Bless you. Thank you. However, it should be noted that 500 is just the average. In the mountains, of course, it rains more. It's worth mentioning that Larnaca had only 358 millimeters in 2023, so significantly less. That was 358 millimeters, but spread over just 36 rainy days. According to statistics, this resulted in precipitation of about 245 millimeters during the winter of 2023/24. And now, for comparison, in the driest winter of the last 20 years in Germany, we had about 116 millimeters of precipitation, and in the wettest winter, about 222 millimeters. So the wettest winter in Germany over 3 months had less rain than last year in Larnaca, just to compare once more. So here in the winter months, I have more rain, heavier rain than in Germany during the wettest winter of the last 20 years. Yes. So, and now I think one should consider why, in fact, more emphasis should be placed on waterproofing against rain or moisture here than in Germany.
So, to put it briefly, when it rains, it really pours, a lot comes down at once. Of course, from May to October, you hardly ever experience that. There might be 1 or 2 rainy days, if any, depending on the season, depending on the summer. But in winter, it really comes down during those 36 days. And as you say, you would think the Cypriots would be concerned about these issues, but unfortunately,
that's not the case. Unfortunately, that's not the case. If you drive around, you see these kinds of things everywhere. It's almost standard that every spring after the winter repairs are carried out, not for every construction project, but generally the loose or plaster surfaces are removed from the loose spots, patched up, then filled and repainted. But the underlying problem just isn't solved. And things like what you see in the pictures now, you see everywhere. Here I have leaks now because there was no proper wall sealing done here, so the water just goes right through. So you do see things like this. And
just leave that there for a moment because that really looks terrible. Yeah, I don't know how well you can see it, but the whole wall has cracks and it almost looks moldy and damp. The paint has flaked off, so that's already serious damage. If you imagine this was your own property, that would really hurt. These are definitely not minor issues. And
above all, once it's happened and it's not repaired properly, it doesn't help much if I just knock off the loose plaster here, patch it up and paint over it. Then it'll look good for a year, but that's it. And the next year, I have the same problem again. And of course, due to the constant moisture, as you can see here, the building structure itself also suffers significant damage over time.
Absolutely. And it also costs a bit to repair it every year. And those are avoidable extra costs.
So you really should place the highest importance on this. You have to pay attention to the waterproofing when you buy a property. Yes, in this case, inspection and supervision are extremely important if you have the opportunity. It's certainly a difficult undertaking to monitor or pay attention to this if you're in Germany and buying a property. This is not an isolated case. Unfortunately, I would say, and I really do not want to exaggerate, but I honestly think that about half of all construction projects certainly have some degree of moisture damage.
If that's even enough?
If enough, yes.
I suspect the real number is even higher. But
I was being very conservative just now.
But it really is truly a massive problem in our society today.
From the pictures, you can see how important it is to have sufficient waterproofing against moisture and rain. And as I said, unfortunately, this does not receive enough attention during construction. For example, even on sloped roofs, there are almost no gutters. No controlled drainage of rainwater. Amazingly enough, in Germany, no one would ever think of building a house without a roof. But unfortunately, that's common practice here.
Sometimes you also see when there are drains on terrace surfaces, like on a rooftop, that pipes, like downpipes, are installed, but they just lead onto the sealed surface. And then the water somehow finds its own way. Of course, the water just sits there, and over time this naturally leads to damage. People simply don't think about where the water is supposed to go, where it will drain off to. That's something that's a bit lacking in the planning, and of course that means damage is basically inevitable, right?
Yes, I've listed that here again. I would say a careful inspection of the construction work before signing any contracts is recommended, because moisture damage often only becomes visible after several years. So after 1 or 2 years, the warranty has often expired. And then you have to cover the repair costs yourself. And depending on the extent, that can easily reach 5 figures.
Absolutely, that's exactly the point. You put it exactly right. It takes 2, 3, 4 years. Then these defects start to appear, maybe a little bit after the first or second year, but then it really becomes obvious. And then it's too late, you're stuck with the costs, and it's really frustrating. That's obviously a worst case scenario, and the standard warranty in Cyprus is 1 year. And of course, that doesn't get you very far. It's simply not enough. So much for the construction quality. So, Gerhard, could you please tell us how you might be able to help if, for example, I want to build or buy a house or an apartment in Cyprus? How can you support in that case? Or if I already own a property and such problems arise, is there a way you can lend a hand?
Well, I can certainly help with the preparations. I can review construction projects, including the planning documents. I'm happy to do that. For such services, I charge a flat fee, and for anything beyond that, I provide a separate quote. But of course, I'm happy to review construction projects. Naturally, I don't have any legal authority here. I can certainly point out mistakes that are made or issues during construction, but I'm not an officially appointed expert here. All I can do is simply report it. And the enforcement is then ultimately up to the builder themselves, making it their responsibility.
Okay, understood.
But of course, there are also options for someone who wants to build a single family home or hasn't built yet to. I also offer to carefully and thoroughly optimize the plans, making sure they are in full accordance with all relevant German standards.
Okay, so you carefully examine the plans and identify the most common mistakes that people often make. You can't really blame anyone for that, it's just the way it is. It's simply a matter of different standards. The Cypriot architects think in certain patterns, so the plans always follow the same schemes. And of course, there are things where you think it doesn't have to be that way, it could be done better. Whether it's the size of the bathrooms or windows in general, that's also a huge topic. Windows that are too small or not enough natural light in the bathroom, where there are certainly alternative solutions possible. And often it's not even a huge difference in cost, but rather, as you said, it's about the optimization you offer. And of course, you also discuss these things with the architect and then improve them so that you don't end up in such situations in the first place. That's obviously a great thing, and I would say maybe, I don't know, but perhaps just a few €1,000 in investment, which in turn could save me tens of thousands of euros in the long run, especially over time. And of course, it also provides a completely different level of quality when it comes to the property itself. It's not a small investment. If we're talking about 500,000 euros, that's now the price, give or take, for a house with 3 bedrooms and a pool. And of course, I could save tens of thousands of euros over the first 10 or 20 years.
If no construction defects occur, if
these defects simply never occur at all. So great thing. It's wonderful that something like this exists here in Cyprus. And many thanks for the really detailed and insightful information. It's fantastic that you're sharing this kind of thing here for free and publicly on YouTube. So really, thank you so much. And yes, I'm already looking forward to the next videos with you.
My pleasure.
And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a like. You're also welcome to leave comments, suggestions, or tips in the comment section. We respond to every comment, and of course, we always look forward to interacting and getting feedback from you.